This is Changeling the podcast.
Welcome to Changeling the podcast. Come for the glamour, stay for the vibes. I'm your host Josh, and with us is your other host Puka. Say hi, Puka.
Bonsoir.
What are we talking about today, Puka?
We are talking about two books for Changeling 20th Anniversary Edition. The introductory quick start Yours to Keep and Ready-Made Characters, which is a book of exactly what the title says. And joining us to talk about these is author and noted all-around excellent person, Christine Beard.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Christine. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hello, it's good to be back.
So I'm noticing on Yours to Keep that when you opened the front, what's this called? Title page, I guess. It says in large letters, Christine Beard. So,
It does. I had no idea that was going to look like that. So that was a nice little thing to discover on the title page there.
Oh, so that's not a picture of you.
No, I do not look nearly that badass staring wistfully into the sea, unfortunately.
I say just claim it.
I wish. I still don't own a leather jacket, and I really should. Please don't mind the sound of one of my cats batting a D12 around or something.
Gamer cat.
Gamer cats. They
This
are
is Changeling.
indeed.
We should be doing D10s. So.
Yeah, I don't. They might have a D10. I honestly don't know. We have so many dice. But yeah, one of the other cool things about that is it's not super common, at least these days, to have just one person working on a project, even these smaller ones. So like that was like a little. It was actually unfortunate. Someone else had to drop. They had a family emergency, but then it kind of turned into like a little like bragging right for me. So obviously very upset for their tragedy, but it worked out cool.
Well, that leads to my first question, at least, which was just, what was the genesis for this book? Because we've had introductory material for Changeling before, but never like a proper separate quick start. So can you talk about sort of how this happened?
Yeah, I want to say it was one of the stretch goals because that would bring it in line with a lot of the other 20th anniversary editions. And I believe because we didn't really have a proper like ashcan version, for lack of a better word, like quick and dirty. If you're not really sure what Changeling is, here's a good baseline simplified version of the rules to get you at least accustomed to this corner of the world of darkness, which is a lot less dark than a lot of the others. So that was a fun little thing to work on.
With respect to that, was there any directive to make it like different from the other 20th anniversary game quick starts, or just kind of do your own thing?
It kind of was very much, we had an idea. So Pete, who was also on the Roundtable episode that I was on last, is the developer for it. And we've known each other for ages. I worked with him. I knew him long before we even started working on the 20th anniversary core book. So we've been friends for a very long time. And he was like, we just want to have a good time. Like, we know we have to pare down the rules, get some characters, get a scenario. And we both grew up kind of doing the down the shore thing, going to the boardwalk. So that's kind of where a lot of the scenario came out of. It was just like, we had this thing in common. It's a really nice setting for Changeling, and it kind of spiraled from there.
So just before we get comments back, there was a second edition introductory kit, but that's not the same because it had like the story hooks were half a page, less than half a page.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, it was more hooks than like a full adventure module type thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant when I said we had material, but not like a properly constructed book thing. Although what I did really like about that intro kit was that it gave you the names for the characters who had the kith art in the second edition core book. So I'm glad to have that knowledge now.
Like face characters or like the iconics. Like I'm used to Pathfinder. Like
And as a born and bred down the shorer, I appreciated also that aspect of the adventure. So kudos.
I do have to say that phrasing was very specific. Like, I think Pete left a note in for the editor. Like, I don't care if this is grammatically incorrect. This is how it is said.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was there for a reason.
If they don't say down the shore, they're just wrong.
Exactly. That is correct. It's like, I grew up on Long Island. on Long Island. You do not live in Long Island. That is not how it works. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to just open some pages here. I did want to ask, there are a whole bunch of groups to whom this book is dedicated on page 2, and I didn't know if these were Pete's dedications or your dedications, but I sort of recognize a few of the names, and I'm thinking these must have been just local gaming groups that, I don't know, I never crossed paths with but heard of.
Yeah, so there are 2 sections. There is for me and Pete. One is his wife. She is our resident boggin, and we do love her, and they grew up doing a lot of Changeling stuff together. And then a lot of the people that he's referencing there are his old gaming groups. A lot of them did the playtesting for Shining Host way back when. So a lot of his are very specific groups that, he's played with for a while and has so much to go on and pull from. So those are his old gaming groups from before the first and second Out of Dreaming before we got to this one. Mine are a little more personal. My dad is the one who got me into gaming. So of course the first thing where I'm like, this is meant to introduce other people. I want to dedicate it to him because that's how I started in this hobby. And then my gaming group that was just always around there, my Long Island crew, as I call them. So
nice.
And my husband, because he's my husband and I love him.
It's sort of necessary to throw the thanks to the spouses.
As a writer, they put up with a lot of crazy shit writers do. I think he came home one day and I like a nice little ambiance when I'm working, and when you get in the zone, you don't realize things like the sun has gone down. So he came home and he's standing at the door to my little office, and I just have candles lit. And again, I have not realized the sun has gone down. So he's like, is the seance part of the process? What is happening here?
It is.
Yeah. Thank all of your writer friends' spouses for putting up with us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess then we get into it. We start with part 1, A World of Dreams.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe we should just read this little opening paragraph, because I do think it rocks and it sums up. We talked a little bit, I think, in our first core book episode of the trilogy we just did about sort of these broad statements that sum up the game really well, and they're comparatively hard to find and rare, so it's nice when you come across them. Do you feel like reading it, or do you want
sure. That whole first little paragraph before themes. So, magic is everywhere. You just need to know how to look. It's in the twinkle of an old man's eye as he tells stories to his grandchildren. It's in their laughter as they delight at his tales. It's every force that brightens the daily grind, the flashes of inspiration that forge masterpieces of all kinds. You've noticed these moments all of your life. Something about them has always soothed your very soul. You find your best company among those with the wildest imaginations, the biggest dreams, and the most resilient hope. In a world bogged down with the boring and choked with the mundane, you seek the stars shining in the darkness and bring their light to others. Such is the world of Changeling the Dreaming.
100. Just perfect.
Thank you.
No, it's because this is a quick start. I mean, what I'm taking as the design principle, even though it's not necessarily spelled out here, is trim the fat. Get to the nitty-gritty bits that any new player or new storyteller would absolutely need to know, and stick with those. And in terms of encapsulating the spirit of the game and the point of the game, I think that paragraph does so much heavy lifting. And so I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot of everything here is boil it down as much as possible without, losing the magic.
Yeah. So we get some themes and moods, which Josh knows is one of my favorite things to pay attention to. So for themes, we have nothing lasts forever, and every end is a beginning. For moods, it's neither one nor quite the other, to talk about duality, and 1 foot in, 1 foot out, sort of in between the world of the dreaming and the autumn world. Get some information on seemings, and really an overview of a lot of the information that we went through in the core book trilogy. So seemings, kiths, courts, houses, and then a lexicon of the basic terms.
Yeah, just your very basics of the Changeling setting.
So yeah, short and sweet.
Yeah, part 1 really is here's everything you need to know. We're going to try not to word vomit too hard and make it interesting still.
Yeah.
And then there's possibly the most banal part of all, which is here's what actually rolling the dice looks like.
Hey, I don't think
I enjoy, I mean, I had to write it.
Yeah.
I tried to make it as entertaining as possible, but
Yeah, as to the rules, I mean, this is mostly like a subset for what you'd get in C20, but, focusing on the sort of core important things. There's a few differences.
Yeah, I don't think we did anything like nightmare dice or anything that would be a little more complicated. It really is pretty much just we kind of just pared it down to yeah.
We do get a sidebar about nightmare.
Yes.
Just as CC20, and then we
pretty much.
It does also specify for Nightmare, though, that this is something in longer running campaigns, which makes sense. Like, if it's a quick start, you won't really have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
something's gotten really weird if you got imbalance in your first session.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. Oh boy.
It does make me wonder if, like, new players who have only done a quick start just unleash with abandon, though. It's like, what do we care? Just.
I mean, I have never seen it happen, but you never know.
It's funny. I've done both Changeling and Mage, and the same people, they're absolutely terrified of unleashing in ways that they're not of, like, Paradox in Mage. It's very
and like the other way around too. Like people will just be like, Paradox, whatever. Oh no, like imbalance. Huh.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah, like,
yeah, that's always funny.
And I guess the other big difference, it does have the arts, but it's just like a brief little description of each.
Yeah,
art.
kind of. Yeah, we went mostly into the arts that the characters have in the setting, but yeah, just we didn't get into like the dotted powers, and that's just way too much info for something that's supposed to be quick and easy.
So, can I ask, was the sort of idea behind this that a new storyteller would use this, or is the assumption that the storyteller would have access to C20 core and be able to kind of fill in any gaps like that, or any? Because I think about, well, for the storyteller characters, how would the storyteller know which powers to give them based on these descriptions?
Yes. I think a lot of it, the purpose of this was a lot of either if the core book isn't clear enough, or you want to try a simplified version before jumping into all the rules, or if you love it and want to get your friends to try it, because as I'm sure we all know as gamers, we find systems and we like them, and we don't always like trying new systems.
Yeah, yeah, I just have this on PDF, but I'm thinking maybe I need to get the print on demand for next time I run Changeling, and just be like, because handing people, I like the C20 core book, but handing people that, I've actually had one potential player say he was interested. He took a look at it and said, "No, thank you." Like,
it's intimidating, especially the C20 edition, where it's like, oh, this is like a leather-bound tome. Like,
it is still several hundred pages shorter than Mage.
Yes. Well, yes, but that's Mage. I'm sure we all love it, but that's Mage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the times too, if you're not 100% sure of what you can do, I think we tried to kind of keep the arts and realms that if we even did realms.
You did, but
that
it's the same, not breaking down by level. Just
I think we tried to keep them relatively close to each other too. So like there shouldn't be too many that don't appear on character sheets. So if someone does have to reference something, they could probably go over there and be like, okay, if they can do this, or
I'm not actually sure if there's any core book arts that aren't in here. I haven't compared.
I think they're all in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly, I wish I still had my outlines. I tend to throw them out once I write them out, but if I was trying to include them all, there certainly was a list that I was like cross-referencing and crossing off as I went.
Anything I haven't cross-referenced it, but anything I'm thinking of is here. So
well,
they're all in. I checked.
Yeah, and especially because Changeling is a little, it's very imaginative. For a quick start, it can be a lot of like, if 1 dot in spring is like I can grow a flower, and like 5 is I can restore the rainforest, I can work out in the middle kind of what I can do, and it might not be, exactly to what the actual powers are, but it works for this purpose.
Yeah. To give players a feel for the arts and how they fit together, rather than to worry so much about one power following another.
Yeah, and like codified exact uses.
Although storytellers take note, you will have to educate them later.
Yes. But this is, again,
maybe it'll get them to unleash more, because
this is the toe dip. This isn't the like we're gonna shove you in the pool.
Yeah. Then part 3. Maybe we should just say spoiler warning for anyone who actually hasn't read this and is thinking about trying this out as their first adventure. I guess we don't have to go into too much detail or anything, but you know.
I do want to say one thing that's a minor point, but it's like this is highlighting it's for a new generation. So there were very few Joshuas my age or older growing up. And then I realized at one point, like, Joshuas were everywhere. And this book starts out with, like, around a missing boy named Joshua. And I'm like, okay, here we go.
And if you asked me where I came up with that name, I could not tell you.
Yeah. No, it's just, I realized at one point, like, I was out somewhere in my 20s, and then all these parents just kept calling my name, and I was very confused as to what's happening. And I realized, oh no, all the children are named Joshua.
And you know what else? There's another Joshua in the next book that we're looking at. So a multiplicity of Joshua. What is the collective noun for Joshuas?
Ooh, that's a good question.
An intensification of Joshuas.
It feels like I'd have a weird one just because of the way the ending,
like a straggle of Joshuas.
Ah. So maybe we should do another opening paragraph read for page 16. Is that doable?
Yeah, I can do that for you.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So the introduction to the actual adventure itself. The dreaming reaches out to everyone who is willing to receive it. Unfortunately, in the autumn world, hearing its message is a difficult thing, and as such, the awakening of any new changeling is a precious moment. The appearance of new nobles, especially, is a rare and wonderful event, and the loss of one all the more devastating. Yours to Keep follows a small-town motley as they investigate the disappearance of a recently awakened changeling visiting their community. They'll have to locate the missing boy, safely retrieve him from the hands of his captors, and make their way back to the safety of their freehold, even if they have to take it back from their enemies.
Dun dun dun. Yes, spoilers possible from here on out for anyone who...
Yes.
So yes, the scenario is set in the beach town of Point Avalon, a popular summer tourist destination, and bearing the same name as a place that I might have gone to in my youth, but with an outsized population of changelings and chimera, and some selkies that visit. Which,
I mean, it's a seaside town.
Yeah, they have to. So each of the characters in the scenario has a close relationship with at least one other within the player characters, and they're all generally familiar with each other, which I feel is a good move for a quick start. You know, give people kind of pre-established reasons for hanging out.
Yeah. It's a little harder to pull off. You all meet in a tavern in like a contemporary setting.
Yeah.
I was never a fan of that either. Like, it just, even in any setting, like I like it when people actually have connections to each other.
Yeah.
Well, it makes you think, who would ever want to be a tavern keeper in those worlds? Like, it's just asking for trouble.
You're here to come brood in the corner? Well, yeah, there's a reason this room's an octagon. Pick one.
those adventurers, they never come back to clean up after their inciting incident.
Oh, no, never ever.
Yeah. So among storyteller characters, we have 3 factions in the cast. There's the Cresthaven Court, which is the Sealy Fiona Run fiefdom to the north of the town. Deepwood Glen, which is the Unseelie Darren fiefdom to the south. And then there are Thalane and the Unseelie Uprising, which I guess are sort of just assorted ne'er-do-wells in the area.
Generally.
I don't know. Should we go through who's involved in each of these? Or
we totally can. This is why I have my copy in front of me, because if you had asked me 2 hours ago, I'd have been like, I do not remember.
I have quickie descriptions. If I mean, I can throw those into the mix if that's...
Yeah. However you want to go.
I just want to say, before we get into them, they all have, there's like a nice way of describing them instead of like using character sheets or whatever. Like, you get your traits in terms of, you get kith, a house of applicable, court, primary, secondary, tertiary for attributes. How good they are at notable abilities. And motivations, arts, and realms. Like, it's all very well concisely written and doesn't take up a lot of space and doesn't get too cramped or anything either. And I think it gives enough information to use them. So.
And so much about a quick start too is like being flexible, because you never know who your players are going to glom onto. Like, if you play the same game with, even just add 2 new people in with the same group as before, you'll get a completely different outcome. So trying to keep in mind, like, none of this necessarily has to be set in stone. It's just kind of like, here's a little inspiration for you.
I think maybe I should try using this template for more notable NPCs in general in my games. Yeah.
It's such a really good thing to kind of get such a bare bones kind of like, you can build it out from there. You can find out who they're interacting with and build that person up from there. And this is just all you need to start.
I might have used it in a Storyteller's Vault supplement, but because I do love this. This is really handy for...
Yeah. No, this was also a lot of Pete just having done this game and all sorts of World of Darkness games for years. He was like, this is how I want to do it. Fill in the template for me. So all credit to him for that.
I do need to ask, because it was a question that we got from the Discord, in relation to the instant dice pools sidebar, where it kind of gives you this overview and says an average person with no training rolls 2 dice on a given roll that they might be called to roll. So basic training 4 dice, then 6, then 8, then a master rolls 10 dice. So kind of giving you, rather than saying add the attribute with the ability, like just whatever kind of roll is called for, determine how likely they are to be good at it, and use that number of dice. But it seems like it doesn't exactly line up with the excellent, good, poor trichotomy that we get for the character write-ups.
That, honestly, may have been at some point a little oversight or like some kind of artifact of things we were changing. And I take a little more solace in knowing that like at least 6 other pairs of eyes aside from mine missed that too, if it got to this point.
Fair.
So I think, yeah. But same kind of thing. If it's, if it's something they're really good at, you can even break down the things that they're intended to be good at into those kind of like, are they the absolute best at it? Is this maybe their secondary but still strong skill, and kind of go from there.
And I mean, you could just say you have the primary, secondary, tertiary for attributes, the excellent, good, and poor for abilities. Just call it 5-3-1. And then
exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. I do think I remember seeing that in a review somewhere, and I was like, I can't believe so many of us missed that. Like, and I generally try not to read reviews. It's just not a good idea.
Yeah.
But
so very briefly, a rundown of the roster of characters. In Cresthaven Court, we have Lord Tierson, the passionate Fiona noble, as though, is there any other kind of Fiona, really?
I mean...
There's Anessa, his fickle, unseelie, silky lover / I don't know. Is she just like, does she have any role within the court? Or does she just come by and break his heart once in a while?
She's very much like a Selkie. She is pretty torn. So having an official role, I think, would be too difficult for her. Like, I can't think she can make that commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that would then have to require being out of the sea more often. And like, it goes back to the whole crux of the Selkie argument.
Tough break for his lordship, I guess.
Yeah. But, sometimes everybody needs a little place to, not have to think about work too. So in a partner, that might be a nice thing.
Yeah. There's also Pomona, the Boggin advisor, and Joshua, the nerdy she-childling, who is the one who just awakened.
Yes.
Then Deepwood Glen to the south. We have Lady Keelan de Winter, the cold but practical Darren hostess with the mostest. Lysander, her knocker best friend, who is also ennobled. The Thalane are Cassiopeia the Severtall, and Brastin, a Spriggan, who apparently has been tricked into her service. So, sucks to be him.
Sucks to be him. Yes. I actually specifically wrote a lot of this adventure the way it is, too, because the Severtall were one of the Thalane I got to write, because the she did not have a Nightmare version. So that was part of the reason I was like, I want to highlight how nasty these guys really are, and like how terrifying it can be to have to go up against one.
Oh, I like them. That's one of the...
I was very proud of them.
And definitely in the debates over how applicable Thalane are to PCs, and like it definitely depends on the kith, and those are definitely NPC kith, I think.
Oh yeah, no, can you imagine?
Yeah.
It would be like
goblins or something different, but like
like a Thalane is more like, oh, this Changeling game suddenly turned into vampire, and the Severtall is the prince.
Last but not least, we have the Unseelie Uprising, who are the Unseelie Commoners of Point Avalon.
The rabble-rousers.
Yeah. They are led by Shadra the Red Cat, but there's also Cardis the Chloricon, who's sort of the socially acceptable face, I guess, and Madoc Lawson, the chill mole puka. Absolutely my favorite of the bunch.
Oh.
So yeah, a nice little diverse cast of characters that can be worked in.
So I think it's Cassiopeia's outfit. I just do not understand.
Oh, is she the one that's in the bikini?
Maybe. Yeah, but
Presumably.
pants, sort of. Anyway.
I think it's supposed to be a sarong. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, okay. Okay,
So,
that would make
yeah.
more sense.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
just kind of that drapey little lower piece that you wear with a bikini.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's another thing. It's we can give art notes, but a lot of times it comes back and we're like,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, I'm just commenting in general for the
Yeah.
listeners
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Choices were made.
Choices were made. But hey, I do love the art style they went with for this book, though. It is really nice to see it all illustrated.
Yeah. And that red cap outfit, like, I've seen that in so many books with red caps. I'm like, I guess somebody was the women or red caps. I'm like, okay, that's
like, sure.
I don't know anywhere else I've seen that except for red caps.
Except for red caps. Everybody needs a shtick.
Yep.
I just want to call out also the storytelling tips sidebar on page 20 as another excellent piece of just brisk advice. Basically introducing the golden rule, and it's a very important piece to have in there. So.
Yeah. One of my backgrounds is in a lot of like improv theater stuff and LARPing, which is improv theater for like 100 people instead of like 5 on a stage.
Although I found experience when somebody comes in to a LARP, they've only done improv, it can get really weird.
That's fair. Ideally, they have, boundaries
they're like, stop yes-anding and doing the, like, I don't know the terminology.
Yeah. My favorite rule is, like, there is yes and, there's also no but.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to redirect this. I'm not going to just stop things, but we're going to steer the conversation.
Yeah, I think it was somebody in a vampire game walking up to the prince and trying to do that. That was the...
Oh my god. Oh boy. Anyway, so yeah, just trying to take what your players want to do and run with it. Like,
we then get some information on the freehold in question for this story. It is a bungalow under a pier that's ramshackle on the outside, spacious and beach-themed on the inside. But this section also notes that it could be transformed into another space with similar vibes in a different kind of location. If you need like a ski resort instead, that's fine. And there's also the helpful note that this works for a one-shot or as the introduction to a longer chronicle.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, this introductory story is set during the summer on a weekend where there's a lot of tourists, but that could be contrasted in a longer chronicle with like a more quieter period of the year. So
yeah, and I do feel like this setting, like, it is definitely a sense of place, but like I know a lot of places where it's like touristy place that has lots of water. That's about what you need, and you can
like
there.
You can kind of figure out what that means for you.
Yeah, if you wanted to set something near somewhere else, yeah.
Yeah, even the water's pretty flexible.
Yeah. Natural feature. Lots of natural feature here.
Yeah.
So the structure of the story, there are 4 scenes laid out here. Oh, actually, I should back up and say this particular weekend when the game is set is when the court to the north and the court to the south have both arrived in town for festivities and whatnot. So everyone is there. And then in the first scene, Joshua, the fledgling she, has gone missing, and it's kind of Rashomon style, various reports about what's happened to him, everyone's a suspect, etc., etc. Scene 2, the characters figure out his location and must go to the rescue with some various possibilities for the antagonists they face. In the third scene, one way or another, they find out who's responsible and sort of head back towards their freehold. And then in the final scene, they discover their freehold has been taken over and they have to take it back. It's the scouring of the bungalow. What I really like about the way this is structured too is there are lots of sort of little branching paths that even within such a minimal framework, it's a good indication of the spirit of the game. And I think that fits with, again, that design strategy of only put in what you need. It's very friendly to first timers as well, because it gives them the sense of having choices, but it doesn't ask them to, they're not required to think too much about what the repercussions of those choices might be. At least not yet. And I like that.
I also want to, like, I don't traditionally like most adventures, like pre-written adventures for any RPGs. I like this. I think
Yeah.
another reason I want to buy the book is I think I want to run this for people. Like this is like probably the first free-write adventure I'd want to do that with. So that's
Well, I'm going to take that as a feather in my cap. Thank you very much.
Yeah, because I'd avoided this book until we were doing it for the podcast because I'm like, wow, it's a pre-written adventure. I don't need that. But
well, I'm glad to have proved you wrong.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have any interest in doing actual plays, but if you want to do it that style, I would hop in and do that with you.
It's on the table for next season. So
okay.
Noted.
Yeah, that is my other podcast is our Pathfinder actual play. Mm-hmm. So
interesting.
Yes.
So each of the scenes as they're laid out here has like a brief narrative overview. It lays out the possible goals of the players and lists the various storyteller characters who might participate, as well as how they'll respond to various strategies the players might take. Each of these scenes is also paired with an overview sidebar that lays out a sensory inspiration to set the scene, the goals of the motley, the obstacles they'll face, and the characters involved. Some of these are optional and there are extra details were needed. For example, there's a chimerical antagonist who shows up at one point, and so their combat dice pool is included in case you get to a scrap. What was, I guess, the process for structuring this? Like, was there sort of a template for laying out the scenes in this fashion and then filling it in, or did it just kind of organically unfold this way?
So this is actually I'm gonna probably make some people hate me. This is actually the first scenario I have literally ever written for any game. So this is how my brain really broke it down, and I was like, okay, we know this is a one shot, so it's like a nice little like bottle episode type thing. So simple opening, simple ending. How can we complicate things in the middle? And then I really liked doing the sidebars to break it down. Because like I've been saying this whole time, so much goes around what the players want to do. So how they get there isn't important. The important part is, so like scene one, like we know we have to find Joshua. That is the goal of scene one. If we want to try and help Cresthaven, that's cool. Here are some things that if the players don't have a direction, you can kind of toy with. But that was really just the beats for it. It doesn't matter how they get there. These are the beats you want to hit for this adventure. And then figuring out, going from that kind of ultimate like crunch down to like, okay, we're going to flesh this out a little more to like I have my bullet point of the obstacles are there aren't too many leads. Okay, where can they maybe find some if they're stuck? So I kind of went backwards from like, okay, big picture, break it down into 4 pieces, break those down into like manageable chunks and kind of expand from there. That's the way my brain works. I do not say that works for everybody.
I do have to say this feels like some LARP things I've read. Like I don't know, if you were to pull up the Golden Cobras or something, like you would probably find some kind of laid out this way. Like wonder if that's where you got that from.
You know, and I've not read a whole lot of Golden Cobra stuff.
Not just like Golden Cobra specifically, but you read any LARP where it's not like the Shining Host, but it's like, okay, this is for one session. We've laid out who the characters are, and
I have done a lot of parlor LARPing type things and like parlor LARP one shot, so that is probably very much where I get it. And this actually carries through in a lot of things where I've also written like for other games. I started doing scenarios for a couple other ones where again, this was how I ended up breaking it down, and I have my little sidebars in every one because they didn't really give me a template. They just kind of like let me do my thing. So again, that's the same.
Yeah.
You could probably follow me and like follow that template and be like, oh, she worked on this.
Yeah. So maybe that's part of why I like this too. Like it is laid out more like those parlor LARP one shots in terms of the amount of structure. It's not super railroady. All these things have to happen, and then you're like, well, but the player did do something in left field. Now I'm confused. Kind of
like D&D
stuff.
That's always my goal, and I struggled a lot with a lot of like organized play things because I felt so many of them are so regimented that way. And I came up playing a lot of homebrew campaigns. So that was the kind of feel I wanted for this. Like, I don't want it to feel like this is the beginning, this is the end. Absolutely. This is how you want to go through it, but how you go through it is your own choice. Make whatever crazy things happen that you want to happen. Yeah. So like,
and it's the kind of thing where it makes sense that the ending would be.
Yeah. For
like, some things you're like, well, you can start with the scenario and it could go a bajillion different ways. Like that's.
Yeah. Which for a longer run campaign, absolutely. Knowing this kind of had to be a contained little thing, it's like, all right, we need a definite end. Either you save him and all is well, or if you do want to turn this into a chronicle, spoiler alert, you've got a budding new Seversal to deal with.
And that's the thing. Like, there are pieces throughout this structure that do kind of open it up to a longer game and the wider world of Changeling, in the sense that you have a contrast in the scene types to kind of give you a feel for the different types of game you can explore. You have suggestions for the aftermath to continue the story. And even mechanical stuff. Like, there's a sidebar, I forget which part it is, but it kind of introduces how an extended action works. And you're like, oh, okay. It's like slowly putting in some more of the rules that you'll need when you get to the core book.
Is that the optional encounter in pursuit?
That's it, yeah.
Yes. So that's the extended action is, I think, trying to track him down, like actually physically track where he was going. Yeah. So we were trying really hard to kind of get a feel for everything, like you were saying. So there is the, the investigate scene, the combat scene, the, the extended action optional scene. Like, we wanted to do our best to kind of showcase what makes Changeling sing as much as possible without overwhelming people.
Yeah, and I think it was a good, and it makes sense that the player characters would want to get involved.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, it's like there's a narrow set of outcomes, but that's makes total sense based on the premise, not just
arbitrarily. Yeah. I try not to be arbitrary about what I do when it comes to writing scenarios. It just feels unfair.
Yeah. The players will get there on their own.
Exactly.
So then the last bit of the book is when we're introduced to the motley, from which the players will presumably be drawing their pre-gen characters. Formerly a band of performers before they established themselves in the humble but well-loved Freehold. They are not the only changelings in town, because there are also knockers who do boardwalk attractions, boggins who run B&Bs, and redcaps just redcapping. But they are, I guess, can we say that they're beloved by the community? Does that work?
Yeah, they're kind of, they're townies, they're year-rounders. They don't travel a whole lot unless they have like a booking, but they're again like small town people. They don't necessarily try to do that much. Yeah.
And it's the one thing to say here, the character and the kith are together. Like, it's describing the character and the kith together. Here is, Erissa is the autumn she. Here's the birthrights and frailties and what it means to be a she mixed in with what it means to be Erissa. And then you get her character sheet, and then the same goes for the rest of them.
And the cantrips, too.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, what cantrips? Oh, yeah, that's handy.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have Erissa, who is the leader and mediator. Errant Shirley, the pisky prankster and mascot, my favorite. William Ash, the reserved Slua contortionist, who also schedules the troops' performances. Sid Steelskin, a Liam Troll handyman and enforcer. And Lily Stoneheart, the loosely affiliated redcap, who's kind of like the gadfly of the bunch.
She's the one on the cover, right?
I think that is her, yeah.
Yeah. It's just we're seeing her Faymane here.
Yeah, we're seeing behind the human mask there.
She's much more pensive on the cover.
Yeah.
Well, she's got her baseball bat. She's good to go here. She's decided her action.
She's not mourning that she doesn't have it. Like she is on the cover. She's It's that Sweeney Todd, like, my arm is whole again.
Yeah. And then there's an ad for Pugmire in the back of my copy. I don't know if anyone else has.
Not in the PDF, I don't think, but yeah.
It is in the POD, at least at that point in time. We'll see if it still is, because I think they're doing a second ed of that. But anyway.
Yeah. There's a nice blurb on the back too. I will call that out.
Oh yeah, our little summary.
Yeah. Chivalry isn't dead, and neither is the dragon.
I think that was Pete's line, and he was so proud of it.
Cue guitar.
It's not bad though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a story about a dragon.
No, but it's about fantasy and imagination.
Yeah.
So overall, what would your advice be to storytellers who want to run this / players who want to play it? And then also any advice you have for continuing it once you've gotten through it? Anything beyond what's in here or that we've already discussed?
It kind of goes back to, especially if you are not using like the full versions of the rules, because again, if this is your test to see whether or not you want to invest in a full leather-bound tome that is hundreds of pages long.
Who wouldn't?
I mean, you should see my basement. I have so many shelves of game books, but
Excellent.
yes, anyway, I could talk about that for a while, but I won't. Be willing to be weird with it. Changeling is weird. Magic is weird. Fae are awesome and terrifying in the very literal senses of the word. They inspire awe and horror and terror and, all sorts of amazing things. But they can also be really weird and really... Just because they're colorful doesn't mean they aren't as horrifying as anything else in the world of darkness. And I think that's one of the things we were trying to set up with a lot of the stuff that happens here is like, as fun and as light as it can seem, a lot of it underneath, when you really look under the hood of Changeling, it's a much closer kind of horror, in that it's about how a lot of things fade and how you want to foster that light in the next generation.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you want to lean into the happy, fun, fairy magic, absolutely. But if you're wondering how this fits into the world of darkness, you don't have to look too far to find out how dark it can really get. And then as far as continuing on, as I move my cat again, sorry. I think I know there are a couple tags at the end of whether or not you're going to keep interacting with either the kingdoms to the north and the south, if you plan on banding together to try and fight this Thaline presence that's suddenly threatening the area. So if you decide you want to pick up Changeling and keep going with it, I recommend looking into maybe more of what's going on with the Thaline, or deeper into some of the court structures of the houses that are mentioned here. Figure out who their allies might be, who other antagonists for them might be, and see what you can spin off, see what your players liked and want to see more of.
Rad.
Sorry if that was like really random and rambly. I
No,
I think I said it last time too. We are great on keyboards and not out loud.
Yes, I know that feel.
Yeah.
As a related question, do you have any advice to writers who might want to create chronicles or quick starts of their own?
That is a very good question. I feel like my goal when I end up writing scenarios or something like this is usually it all kind of comes from something like, for this one, it was, okay, we need to change in the quick start. We want to introduce these concepts. What's the best way to do it? Okay, let's have a character, maybe not a player, who's gone through the dream dance and like suddenly is introduced to this brand new. So that's like your POV character almost. You're not playing it, but like you're following his journey very closely. So if that's the kind of thing you want to do for a quick start, I'm not saying every time, have a protagonist or character who's like suddenly brand new to the world. That can get a little tiring if it's, it gets repetitive. But remembering that you're trying to introduce this to someone, you can boil it down, you can chop off some of the harder parts at first and maybe start introducing them later. And if you're doing small chunks like this, even if you end up finding or writing 3 or 4 scenarios you didn't imagine were connected, swap out some of the NPCs, swap out some of the locations, make it places they've seen before, and they'll probably never know they weren't connected in the first place. And like I was saying, my process a lot of the time is, here's my initial idea of where things start. Where are we thinking for how it's going to end? And what interesting things can happen in the middle? But yeah, it's a lot of, if you want your players to have as much agency or to feel that they have as much agency as possible, have really simple, broad goals for them. Like, find the thing you're looking for. I don't care how. If you find a different thing than I was thinking that still works, I'm not going to be like, well, that's wrong. You have to put it down and go find this other thing. We can substitute it out. Or, get this information. Are you going to interrogate someone? Are you going to hack into a database? I don't care. You need to get this information. So have those really broad goals that they can choose the path to. And that's going to be so much more fun for them than like, you need to figure out what I had in my head.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I hope, again, that all makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
As a friend of mine says, if I ask that, it's not because I think you're dumb, it's because I think I'm incoherent.
I empathize with this. Yeah. Anything else that we should say about Yours to Keep before talking about the other book?
I don't know if I feel like I've done a lot of talking, so.
I think we're good.
So next book is Ready-made characters.
So this book, it's a little bit different in that it is really just some ready-made characters and motleys, but it introduces each of the 13 core kiths, and each character has kind of a longer backstory than the ones in the quick start. There's also 2 character sheets that are kind of basic and advanced, although I don't think this is really explained anywhere.
Mm. Oh, I see. Yeah, so they add freebie points in the...
Yeah. I guess in relation to the quick start, Christine, do you see any of these as being integrable into yours to keep, or do you think they're better reserved for a longer chronicle? I mean, I know they're not tailor-made to the setting, but I'm just thinking about these 2 books together.
If there is something that captures you way more than any of the characters in the quick start, I think a lot of the characters can fairly easily be slotted in. One thing I do really like about the ready-made characters is how the motleys do have those little relationship things.
Yes.
They have like little relationship charts. So you could definitely easily be like, okay, this Seder school teacher, you know, she's absolutely part of it. And maybe she knew, or she went on a field trip and had met this character Joshua before. And like, so you could really kind of slot a lot of them in anyway, just find a way they know someone. It's a small town. So you could pretty easily justify anyone from that book, I think, slotting in here, or in regards to the Jumpstart, also just making your own character if you want to dive into that.
Right on.
I do also wish it had some introduction.
Does it really just like dive right into? I'm trying to pull up my copy, but it's being a pain in the butt on my computer.
It just jumps right into it. So I'm like, it doesn't make clear what the setting is for these people and their motleys.
I guess I feel like the quick start is more of a standalone document, and then the RMCs are much more of a true supplement of like this cannot be used without the core book.
No, but they're bad. It's also anyway. I think a little intro explaining how to use this in your game might have been nice.
Yeah.
Josh, do you want to throw some names at me, and I'll give you some descriptions for these?
Sally Bobbin,
the gentle but highly efficient Sealy Boggin seneschal of a Fiona Freehold / kindergarten teacher, I think.
Brady Fish,
a sociable, unseelie Cluricon street fighter and criminal fixer searching for his father.
I might pronounce this wrong. Lul Albaz.
This is the kindergarten teacher. Sealy Ishu, teacher from Somalia, who apparently her mother went through the ritual of the parted mist. So we have one example of a mortal going through that form of enchantment.
Kaori Tsukamoto.
Knocker gamer prodigy teen from Japan with a deep dreaming / virtual reality rig, and I'm desperately curious how that works.
Kay Sparks.
A non-binary Sealy Pisky teen runaway who has frightening amounts of dexterity.
Chuck Wood.
The good-natured unseelie puka underachiever who becomes, wait for it, a woodchuck.
I mean, come on.
Someone was waiting years to make that.
To do that.
Yeah. Steve Market. Okay, some of these names are...
I know, similarly, yeah. This is someone who crystallized, and someone said, okay, what's your fey name? And he's like, I'm Steve Market.
I do feel like strong nomic determinism works in Changeling.
Yeah. I do feel like we are doing a disservice by not describing some of these people. Like Brady Fish has like such a power stance going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, Steve Market is a gleefully unseelie red cap business shark. I mean, like that's the pun, right? Is that it's like a business shark, almost Dauntain level. But
Lily Porter,
the over-the-top Sealy Seder sex therapist, interestingly depicted in the artwork as being with child, and yet not mentioned anywhere in the text.
I didn't want to say anything. I mean, it's possible she's just...
I think the hand on the belly kind of is a pretty strong indicator. It's kind of like, you know, if you ever see a woman puke in media, you are to immediately assume she's pregnant. Same with the hand on the belly.
But it's interesting that that would be something actually really, as like a character aspect, I would be curious to see how that plays out, you know? And it's something that I wouldn't want anyone to take on. Like I would want someone who basically knows what they're doing to play that character, but that's something that I've never seen before in the game.
Want to say I remember something about this art being discussed specifically because they're like, especially because it was the Seder character, like we don't want to make this seem fetishized, but at the same time, like, why wouldn't she be? Like,
yeah.
There's a few characters. I've noticed a few characters here where the simplified or the pre-bonus points and then with bonus points have different seemings. Such as Steve Market.
I did notice reading through, a lot of them can tend to have early and then late story beats. So I wonder if it's like before and after, or just different takes on the character instead of like a basic and a complex.
They apparently all have 75 experience points, so I guess that's how they did the math. But yeah.
Okay, so one is maybe no bonus points. I can't tell.
I think the one is like standard character creation, and then they've gone through the rest.
Okay, so then we have Joshua Royce.
The beautiful but melancholy Unseelie Selkie with a dark fate.
Gotta love the Burks, though. Birkenstocks.
I love how his antithesis is showing mirth. I'm like, come on.
How else can he be so misunderstood? He has to long for the sea.
Yeah.
I say this as an unrepentant emo child. So,
Lady Jelana,
a Darrenshi gardener / I don't know. She's a she. She's got cleared mists, and she came by her freehold through dubious means.
As is appropriate for the Unseelie.
Yeah.
Dominic Lowell,
a child activist Autumn Skahashi who's aloof with other changelings. And he's only 11.
Leshaya Prophecy Ellis,
an Unseelie Slua kid with a single mom, nightmares, and a pet shadow monster.
Is it written into the Slua description that they don't have noses?
Oh, I thought it was redcaps who don't have noses.
I don't recall. Well, if you look, she's got like Voldemort face going on, and I feel bad for her.
Aww.
I mean, some of them look like their nose fell off, but no, that's...
Yeah. Slua, like, if I were not a knocker, I would probably be a Slua, so like...
Well, my first changeling character was a childling knocker with a shadow monster, so it's great.
Aww.
Julio Garcias?
Probably Julio.
Julio, sorry, right.
Julio Garces, I would think.
Garces, okay.
A troll grump who did time and is putting his Unseelie past behind him.
Okay, and then we have motleys.
Yes. Yeah, I do really love the webs here, especially because it's changeling, so you can have full color pages, so you can have clearly delineated who feels what about whom.
Yes, they're...
Whenever I see these in like a vampire book and it's in black and white, I'm like, oh no.
Like, oh, I really hope these lines are easy to follow. They are.
Yeah. Well, then I'm like, they should be using different characteristics for the colorblind. Anyways.
Anyway.
I think of the accessibility.
Neither here nor there. I don't need to get in trouble with anybody.
No, I've done a lot of accessibility.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Things.
Yeah, but yeah, no, like color and stuff is so much of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the motleys, these are all sort of possibilities rather than hard requirements in the way that they're described. They explore possible dynamics of the characters involved in interesting ways. And there's a description about how they formed the group and how they operate and what their goals are. So yeah, pretty thorough.
Well, I'm a sucker for either alliteration or rhyme. So, like, now streaming The Dreaming as one of the Motley makeups. I'm like, okay.
Wait, and that's the Dreaming VR again. I have so many questions. Like, how does this work with relation to the mists, for example?
I have a question about motleys as it's being used now. Some of these characters, it's like, sort of belong to more than one, potentially? Is that okay?
I thought it was just kind of pick the one that works for you. Like,
yeah.
But
could you do that? Like, do they have to be? Is every changeling only in at most one motley?
I'm looking into my lexicon that we put in the quick start to see if we had a definition of motley, because I do not remember off the top of my head. And we did not. Right, from mist to mortal seeming. So I think we were kind of just loosely using it to be like the player group.
Yep.
Yeah. Should we go through these briefly as well? Or?
Sure. So do you want me to read them out? The names?
Yeah, go for it. Go.
Social Justice Valkyries.
This is Sally, optionally Kaori, Kay, and Lily hunting the dreaming for the patriarchy. To slay it. Not like to, be friends with it.
Yeah. Wait, can you find the patriarchy in the dream? Anyway.
I'm sure you can. There's absolutely a chimerical representation of the patriarchy.
Several, according to this. Yeah.
The Seekers.
The Seekers are Brady, Lashaya, and Julio, optionally also Joshua, searching for Brady's father.
dark mentorship.
Steve, Jalana, and optionally Brady are trying to warp Dominic's sense of justice to turn him unseelie.
Bright mentorship.
This is Lily, Julio, and optionally Kay trying to instead encourage more positive growth on Dominic's part.
Yeah, see, these definitely could be. These should be
Yeah, those could be opposed. I like that.
Yeah. And then now streaming The Dreaming.
Yes. So Kaori, Chuck, and Lily, and optionally Joshua as they're like video gamers who tap into the dreaming and play it on Twitch or something.
Yeah. Well, this reminds me actually of when I was looking up, like we were getting our podcast set up originally, and it came across an older podcast called Changeling the Streaming, and I'm just that was a let's play.
Yeah. But like the mechanical questions alone around this are just
I mean, we incorporated some more internet stuff into like Kith Book Boggin too, where you could have like digital dreamers and things. So not unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's definitely interesting. And I mean, it's also it doesn't look like the audience is getting sucked in, and afterwards it's the mists. It was just really cool CGI.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just would look like CGI anyway if you're on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like they're doing anything. How much could you do that wouldn't look like that?
Yeah, for real, right?
Yeah. And then we have Ms. Albaz's field trip. That's a complicated map.
Yes. So this is Lul Alabaz running. It's kind of like Miss Frizzle, I guess, for that kind of theme. But for Kay, Joshua, and Lashaya, optionally also Dominic and Sally, having adventures with the kids.
Lady Jalana's retinue.
This is Brady, Kaori, and Chuck around Jalana, optionally also Lashaya, basically just an unseelie court, setting them up like a fiefdom or whatever.
The Glorious Endeavor.
Sally, Lualabaz, Julio, and optionally Dominic as a Fiona tour bus freehold going around doing good. This is my favorite of the bunch.
That sounds pretty great.
Like, it's just, oh, here comes the bus.
We were watching Mayhem on Disney Plus recently, so it just feels like traveling with the Electric Mayhem from the Muppets. Just like insanity and, good times abound and definitely some kind of magic.
Almost every great adventure starts with a bus. That's my... So yeah, those are the motleys. And any favorite characters among the 13 characters? I quite like the Sluo with the shadow monster, I'll admit.
That's true.
The Sluo, and I do have my soft spot for broody boys with long hair. So like I do have to say the Selkie is pretty cool.
Yep. Staring wistfully out to the sea.
I mean, come on now.
The last bit of the book are some plot seeds that can work with one or more of the motleys, often centered around one or more of the characters. There are motivations, obstacles, twists, and suggestions for how to integrate them into a story, all kind of worked into the descriptions. So, pretty nice. But yeah, that's it. Then there's another ad for Pugmire and Scion 2nd edition. Overall, I mean, it's a useful tool for players and storytellers alike, though it feels like it's supposed to be something for everyone, but they're very specific somethings, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of extra options rather than wiggle room.
I do think a few words towards how you're supposed to use this book would have really helped me, because I've sort of left at the end of this going like,
well, so
I have some ideas, but it's not
in between, on the PDF at least, in between the little like the art splashback page and the actual final page, which is 69. There is running a one-shot game of Changeling the Dreaming, 20th Anniversary Edition, starting up a chronicle with new players who aren't sure what to play, looking for some examples of how the various kiths might look. Thanks to our generous Kickstarter backers, these 13 ready-made characters cover each of the Changeling kiths. Each character is provided with background role-playing suggestions, art, and some potential motleys and story seeds. Everything you need to immerse yourself in Changeling. Yeah, the core book is needed, but like, yeah, it could have been like in the front, not in the back.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that. That's always just where they sell you on it, not explain to you what the book's for entirely. Yeah.
Can I mention, on the hard copy, all of that text is on the back cover, and I literally did not notice it because it's so tiny and stuck up in the top header above the giant art.
That is how that looks on that is just part of the back cover.
Yeah,
okay. It's hard to tell in the PDF layout.
Because I mean, the art, I do, for all of the interestingness about the art, I love that's the cover design, is that just this big splashy artwork of all the kiths, but then Yeah, that's valuable information that kind of gets squeezed off to the top.
Visual hierarchy. That's
Yes.
a term you learn in design school.
Yes.
I think this range is going through all these Changeling supplements. So this one has no introduction versus Dreams and Nightmares. The introduction's actually like
The most
core
important.
Yeah, it's like core important things in the book, not just telling you what it's about, but like it's the meatiest content chapter.
Yeah.
So got a good range here.
It happens.
Anyway, any other opinions about either or both of these?
I mean, not just because you're a guest, but I think I prefer yours
Yes.
to keep.
I mean, it's a vastly different kind of supplement.
Yeah.
Because the ready-made characters is not for new players. This is for people who are, I'm starting a game, I've played this a dozen times, I just need to grab some characters and some plot hooks and just go for it.
And they focus on very opposite things. Like there is so much information around the 5 main characters in the motley versus this is the 13 kiths as characters and some stuff to use them with.
Yeah. What I want from ready-made characters too is like things I could drop into whatever game a bit easier, but it's like, oh, here's a full freehold specced out that's sort of generic. I could put in like the player characters have gone to this new place and they're going to a freehold and been before. Here's a freehold with the people and their dynamics. That would be cool.
So you prefer to see something more GM focused, or this is very player focused?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll take that under advisement for Storyteller Vault things.
Yes.
Because I found players buy the core book and maybe their kith book for the kith they like. It's usually
fair enough.
As much as that?
No, that's the most. Sorry, not.
Yeah, no, I'm shocked they buy that much.
I mean, then there's like me and my husband who our collection of, I think he has every vampire book that was published for like second or third edition.
I don't think either of you count as just players.
Anyway, we digress.
Yes. So, Christine, if people are interested in things you're working on, or if you have any places on the internet where people can reach you or things to share, please tell us about it.
Yeah, you can find me on a bunch of social media at either the Petite Warlock or the Little Warlock if I couldn't get Petite. My website is thepetitewarlock.com, and that's got a list of credits I've worked on. I'm starting to do a section on like miniatures I've painted and like might actually do a blog, but I don't know who wants to read my thoughts that are just thrown into the ether. If you have not heard enough of me talking, you can also catch me and a bunch of my friends doing our Pathfinder actual play on the Cracked Die podcast, wherever you can listen to podcasts, at thecrackeddiepodcast.com to learn more.
Links provided in the show notes.
Thank you very much.
And you can find those show notes at changelingthepodcast.com or in your podcast feed for whatever you listen to. If you listen to podcasts and you'd like it in a way that we don't have, let us know. We'll put it there, but we should be everywhere pretty much. Also, talk to us on Facebook, our group Changeling the Podcast. You may be listening to us right now on YouTube, and we're getting actually some nice comments there for Changeling the Podcast. Best way to talk to us is probably discord.me/CTP. But you can also send us a toot on Mastodon, changelingpod@dice.camp, and you can always email us, podcast@changelingthepodcast.com.
Links to all of these will also be provided in the aforementioned show notes.
Yeah. And once again, I'm Josh.
I'm the ready-made character known as Puka.
And remember, if your last name's Market, you better be getting an MBA.
Finders, keepers, glamour reapers. We took a brief sojourn into the dreaming to locate the well of ready-made characters, an unholy construction of chimerical paper and poor arithmetic from which Fae with the most unlikely combinations of traits emerged, full-formed and slick with creative juices. Many of them burbled and waved their appendages in an attempt to win our favor and get us to form them into a motley. There was Bisclauret, the wolf Puka, with an exact spread of arts and merits to approximate one of the Garou, Kundera the Knocker, who designs chimerical supercomputers powered by 1,000 nevers all hand-waving at once, and Petunia, the immortal Skahapiski ninja sorcerer duchess with dark fate. Regrettably, we had to abandon them to the swamp of unplayed games, where they will linger despondently until at last they dissolve back into the rainbow-stained soil. These and other adventures are in part made possible by listeners like you, and in particular our patrons, to whom we'd like to give one of our extra special lists of shoutouts. Derek, Dorcadus, Ellerus, Hugo the Bog Person, Ia Bull, Jason Vines, Oreo, Roscaboose, Sandchigger, Sija, Terry Robinson, Tricerabeth, and Victor Torre. If you'd like to support our expeditions and experiments, you too can sign up at www.patreon.com/changelingthepodcast. We also welcome reviews on the podcast listening platform of your greatest convenience, and we'd be right chuffed if you'd mention our show to your gamer friends and star-crossed lovers. Many thanks again for listening, craft your characters with care, and until next time, keep on dreaming.